Good morning, India Blockchain Week. How are you all doing? No response. Okay. Yeah, that's what Ishank predicted that this is how our panel might be. But I'm excited to talk about AI because I come from the world of AI. These folks come from the world of both AI and Web3. Uh, so I want to piggyback something upon we were talking about how Web3 is contributing to AI, and then we can talk about what AI is doing to Web3.
Okay. Is this working? Yeah, it
Yeah.
sounds like it's working. So, our mental model is very simple, right? Web3 seems to be the trust layer of AI. Without Web3, I find it difficult to believe that on the account side, which is whether it's a user, a human account or a bot account, or on the ownership of data side, which is you're watching a video on your phone, whether was it created by AI or whether was it created by another human, the attribution of digital assets, both of those things are where I believe AI and Web3 need each other. Without Web3, it's impossible to have trust in AI. Without Web3, I believe the dead internet theory will only get propagated further. I don't know if you're familiar with the dead internet theory, which is more than 50% of the content is already bought online, right? So various things, I'll stop here, but lots of areas where AI actually needs Web3.
Prasanna?
Um, yeah, I think like Web3 and AI are like a killer combo. For the first time, Web3 has like a fully open source code. Like, it's the highest economic value of code that has ever been generated. You know, and like the killer use case of AI today, the most money spinning use case is like code generation. That's what makes the most money for AI today. So it's a lethal combination together. So what we do is like, we use AI code generation to go out and index smart contracts. So 0x people is like, you can go see your assets, not only across various different chains, but you can see it inside of smart contracts. And, we've been able to use like AI to like run simulations to figure out this is your money. And you can click a button and like withdraw the money. So, so it's like the AI has sort of like been a leap forward in like how much coverage you can provide. And, so AI and crypto are like, interfacing at like a deep level in terms of like code talking to each other.
Gaurav, I mean, you take one of the core ethos of Web3 in terms of decentralization, right?
Sure.
Tell me about how did you kind of come up with that and how it might differ from, say, compute providers in Web2 world?
So I think, like, first of all, people should realize how big the problem is in the first place. We're sitting in India, so let's try to correlate with India first. Let's talk about some data because data doesn't lie. We graduate every year around 1.5 million software engineers. Every 3 years together, we basically graduate more number of engineers than the total US population combined. You dive deep, we produce around 12% research of AI sites, which is neck to neck same as US. But yet all the innovation is happening out of US. What's the fundamental reason? A graduate sitting in a Bangalore University or Mumbai University has the same neural network design in his brain, right? But when that particular student wants to actually have an implementation, the reality is that the compute, the actual GPU hardware on which you create a model, that costs 500 to 1,000 rupees per hour. Now tell me how many software engineers in India can afford it? The answer is less than 0.1%. And among that 0.1 also, majority are from IITs. That's a reality. Now come to the software companies also, same story. Like, even if you're funded, you want 100 H100s, trust me, if you go to Amazon and say you need 100 H100, you have to wait for months, if not a year to get it, right? And in our business, time loss is business lost, right? So you need a permissionless system open to everyone so that if you need something, it's at a very cheap price. And think of it, I've worked in AWS in past.
Yeah.
When we deal with big companies, we do give 70, 80% discounts. So nobody's doing the work for charity. So if with the 80% discounts to big companies, they can survive, why don't they give it to the smaller companies? The reality is the incentives are very high. So how do we come in picture? We aggregate this inventory and we make it a fair marketplace that even a college student or a startup can actually afford and don't have to wait for months or a year to get the compute. That's how we basically give it back to the community.
Gaurav talked about the base layer of AI, which is providing compute. I want to get back to you because you're a data provider in the sense, one of the things that you do. What we talked about, provenance of the data. How does it play the role for, say, even student developers to leading AI companies? Why would they choose you versus, say, a Scale or Makor? Touch upon that.
Yeah, that's a great question, right? So think of it in 2 or 3 main components. So the way we envisage Kai, which is one of our main products for AI training, is it's not a regular vendor to frontier AI labs, but instead it's actually a marketplace where communities or clan chiefs, as we call them, all over the world, particularly in the global south, can bring their network of contributors in one place. They can define their work product with the right ownership. And this work product then gets purchased by different AI labs, whether they are frontier labs or whether they are the long tail of companies, in order to pre-train or post-train their models, right? So what are the key differences? There is obviously a lot of activity happening in this space globally, particularly on the West Coast. But there are maybe two really important differences, but three, because I like the number 3, differences I want to talk about, right? So the number 1 difference, which I think is super powerful, is true provenance of the data, right? Whether it was created by Prasanna, whether it was created by Gaurav, how do you know that? It's not about the identity, it's not about the name Gaurav, but it's about the digital account that represents Gaurav that is creating that sort of work output, whether it's audio, video, or text. The second part is whether this was done by somebody who has the reputation to do that part of work. So for example, you're asking me to generate a piece of a prompt response pair for a code. How do you know for sure whether it was generated by a computer science engineer or whether it was generated by a lab in Bangladesh, which has 1,000 farmers sitting there, right? So the verification of the reputation is a very important part, which can be done on-chain without revealing the identity. So those 2 things are super powerful, right? The third thing that Kai is able to do for these labs is we have a approach where we are able to onboard users from India, each state of India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Vietnam, Nigeria, Egypt, Brazil. I can go on and on, right? We have about 20 countries where we have a meaningful user base. Now, very few partners to these frontier AI labs can bring you that level of diversity to train the models, because one of the biggest problems that the models face today is they're not inclusive. A lot of their answers that you get are subject to a particular ethnicity, subject to a particular race, right? And you want these models to be more inclusive. So those are the 3 things that we really believe are able to differentiate Kai and why we are able to build a meaningful platform using the core principles of Web3, but powering the right solutions for frontier AI labs.
Prasanna, I want to talk about the top of the pyramid, which is consumer apps, which I report about and I am excited about all the time. We talked about AI helping make sense of Web3. I mean, you have your assets everywhere. You might be trying out a lot of new apps. With 0xPPL, how do users kind of make sense of their on-chain presence as well as assets?
Yeah. The beautiful thing about Web3 is like for the first time, we have a completely permissionless, decentralized backend. And for the first time, you could build like a universal front end with the way the AI is going, right? Today, you discover things like an app store or Google or something, but then you sort of go into the app, use their front end to do most of your commerce. My previous company, Rippling, which is today pretty successful, it's worth like more than 10 billion. What we did was we sort of pulled out a little bit of a front end of all the SaaS software out there into Rippling, so that you can manage your employees in one place. And with 0xPeople, you can manage all your assets in one place, all your Web3 assets in one place. We're able to go, deeper into the smart contracts. We don't need to so we're able to unify all these front ends across a ton of Web3 apps that keep coming up. The thing with Web3 is like, each time you use a product, like use any app, like you use a new blockchain, you use a new Web3 app, your wallet shows that you lost some money. You kind of need, like, need to keep track of it because it sort of goes into a smart contract or like, So what 0x people does is like, we go out and index all the blockchains out there, and we index your money inside of these apps, inside of these smart contracts. And, for the first time, because these are all like permissionless APIs, we could build a super app, which is a super front end, from where you can manage all your money, right? So you could see that, hey, I want to unstake this money. You unstake right within your wallet, and the money comes to your wallet. Like a great wallet should like never lose your money, right? So that is something you could do for the first time, because of how AI is going, and like because crypto is like an open, permissionless backend.
So, Sam Altman, Mark Zuckerberg, even Alexander Wang from Scale AI, they've made the case of building sprawling campuses for data centers. You're doing something different as to getting compute from very different things. Make a case for, would you want, can we avoid building megaton data centers and possibly use decentralized infrastructure to possibly save AI's bad side of extreme power consumption as an environmental?
So I'll give you two examples, right?
Yeah.
And I fundamentally believe the way they're headed, like it's not scalable. I'll tell you why. Let's say me and you together are doing business. Yeah. And we're doing it in Singapore, extremely good. We're doing great business, right? Now you're trying to open your business in India. You come to me and say, I need 1,000 GPUs. What will be happening in the background? I have to create a building or rent a building. I have to go to NVIDIA, order 1,000 GPUs. They'll ship it in 3 to 6 months. I have to hire a team, assemble all these GPUs, and then give it to you. 6 to 8 months of lag. Opportunity lost, right? So, and the other side of things is, like I was telling you, that we have such a big human capital, but 70% of the compute today of the world is just in US and China. That's the numbers. And if it takes 6 to 8 months to create this data center, you can't concrete your way out of this problem. You can't just create 10 different data centers, because by the time you will create it, your competition is way too ahead, right? So you have to go through decentralization, the aggregation, that way around. That's one. Second, if you take a step back as a builder, your GPUs and all these resources are used in 2 things: training and inferencing. Training is when you use this hardware, throw it a bunch of data, let the model train on this data, right? That's only 20% of the use case. Rest 80% is inferencing. Your model is created, you deploy on the hardware, let it run, and people use it, right? And when you basically talk about training, that is the time when you need all these GPUs to be together, because you're moving data from one city to another. It's create a problem, right? For remaining 80, once your model is created, you can deploy anywhere. And imagine the closer the GPU is to your personal location, the better it is. Meaning, if you're using a GPU of somebody's house, and as long as it's good, it's better for you. So if you're sitting in Bangalore, GPUs in Bangalore, better experience. If you're sitting in Pune, better. So if you aggregate this inventory, first of all, it's faster, it's more elastic. And for the 80% of the use cases, which is inferencing in the world, it's much more efficient. The energy part, all the other part is obviously there. And in a country like ours, where there's so many contracts you signed for the buildings and all, you literally can't concrete your way out. The only way is basically creating a marketplace, aggregating, and doing it. And people have been doing it in Uber, in hotels, and Make My Trip and all. It's not a very novel idea. People have done it. It's just the case that in GPUs and AI, the money is so big, the incentives are so high, that people are basically pushing these things back so that they don't happen. And that's where Web3 comes in picture, that we have this power.
One thing, I think you made a point about, one thing good about decentralization is naturally there is no one point of failure. I mean, we've seen both AWS and Cloudflare act up in last few days. So with decentralization, I can get my compute, but is there a downside in terms of, can I get enough compute? I understand that ranging from, if a student developer is building something, they might not need a lot of stuff, but when we move to enterprise, they would need a lot of constant power and power to train their models as fast as they can.
So what people don't realize is how big is the problem in the first place. So recently, like you get an example of Cloudflare. Recently, we had a CME downtime. CME is a $1 trillion derivative market, which went down just because of one AC not working. It's indirectly saying your whole Indian stock market went down for a day just because one AC wasn't working. It's that bad. We literally are using our centralized work in a way that, let's take in a layman term. We all want to go to the airport. We're using one highway. It's fast, it's efficient, until it's not. One accident on that highway, everything is stalled. Everybody is late, flights, nobody is able to catch up. That's a reality. What happens in deepens and in Web3 is, you just don't use this highway. You use your side alley, your back alley, everything. If one particular road has an accident, you go and use the other one. Many times, as a user, you don't even realize there was an accident. You always reach on time, right? On the centralized players, is this resilience possible? Absolutely yes, it's there, right? But what happens? You have to pay a tax for it. So if you're having a software and you want resilience, what you'll do is you'll deploy it in US, you'll deploy it in New Zealand, and for this redundancy, you have to pay tax for it, right? The duplication tax. In Web3, this resilience comes as a property of the network itself. And that's how we structure it.
I think Gaurav made a point about, if you don't get compute, you are not moving fast. I want to make the case for, I want you to make the case for the data that you provide through blockchain that, hey, this is the verifiable data. You don't need to find out, go to different providers to find the good quality of data. Tell me about how would it benefit from any range of players to even Frontier AI Labs getting data from you, that we know the data that we are getting, the quality, and the experts who have provided the data is very high quality, and that's why our models will be more efficient.
So let's break it into two parts. One is making sure it's being provided by the right people, and two, getting that data at scale in a timeline that is suitable for the Frontier AI Labs, right? So the first part is the profiling of the users who are providing this data sits on chain, and it gets automatically updated each time that user does a task. So it's not a static reputation system, it's a dynamic reputation system where based on the validation rate that you're seeing for the tasks that are being done by these users, the profile goes up or down in very simple terms. The second part is when you are looking at, let's take a real example, right? Let's take an example of somebody wanting to train an audio model with both text-to-speech and speech recognition, right? Sort of tasks. And let's say they want you to provide 500 hours of training data across 16 languages globally. 8 Indic languages, Bengali, Kannada, Tamil, because I'm sure all of you know that India is the second largest market for all these models right now. And let's say 8 global languages, German, Portuguese, Spanish, Vietnamese, and so on, right? So the first part is that we have this set of million users where you can actually target and find out who has done audio tasks in the past. The second part is, let's say you're not able to fulfill your requirement from the people who've done audio tasks, you actually go to their profiles and see what are the sort of indicators in their profile that make you believe that they can do audio tasks, right? It could be as simple as this person is a master's in arts, right? I'm oversimplifying it. And if you have that information about that person's reputation on chain, you can easily look them up. The third part is using a decentralized approach of getting these clan chiefs all over the world. As of today, we have about 30,000 active clan chiefs. They will reach out to these users who were selected in your step 1 and step 2 to actually produce those work outputs. The important part in that work output now is accuracy and QC, right? So the QC is also done by this network itself. So you are generating the task, he is doing the QC, right? So that makes it super quick. That also ensures that Gaurav is being asked to do QC because his previous QC had a very high validation rate. If his QC is not highly validated, that means his QC is shit, right? I mean, sorry for my language. But long story short, if you have all of these feedback loops sit in the same reputation system, and that reputation system is immutable and transparent, it makes it super easy for everyone to trust this system because there is not one agency or one person controlling a farm of 1,000 data suppliers, right? It's a global network.
Gaurav, interface is one of the things I like to talk about a lot. With new age applications, one of the things that is very important is for user engagement to have the best modalities for you. Talk to me about building a Web3 application in this age, how do you think about interfaces, and leading to that, how is AI kind of helping you design those or think about the modalities?
I'll give you a practical example. Uh, Last week, I was trying to create a POC of a project. Like, this is already made company. I was trying to create a decentralized version of it. So imagine I went to same.neo. It's a website. You just give a link of any website. It'll create a replicated version of it, the whole website. So I have a 34-inch TV, monitor at my home. And half of that, I was basically watching a podcast. In other half, I had this AI tool, the vibe coding platform. I gave that link. It created a website in 10 minutes. It gave me 5 different options to me that you can make this change, this change, this change, and the website will be better. It already created a new website, replicated. Yeah. It gave me 3 options. I said, okay, do it. It did it in 5 minutes, right? In another 5 minutes, after completing, do these changes, these changes, these changes, your website would be bigger. I'm watching a podcast for a couple of hours, and in 2 hours, not even fully focused, I have a website working. I took that code, I went to Google's anti-gravity, went to ChatGPT, didn't even write anything, just opened that voice thing, gave him like what I want, right? It created all the tasks, what it needs to do. I gave it to anti-gravity, it created a backend for me in like 15 minutes, integrated both the things in half an hour, and I told anti-gravity, test it for me. It popped up a Chrome, tested everything, this is the bug, fixed it, and said these are the optimizations you could do. I'm watching a podcast of 4 hours. It's a practical thing with me last Sunday. I'm watching a podcast of 4 hours, completed the project without even being focused, and 5-8 years back, this would have taken 4 to 5 team members 1 month to do.
Yeah.
This is where we are.
Prasanna, I mean, you've built a massive platform in Rippling. How was your journey in building 0xPPL? How did that came about, and how did AI help you build parts for obviously the application interface, also navigate certain parts of Web3, like we talked about, traversing all the chains and getting information for users as well?
Yeah. One of the things about, so first thing I learned from Rippling, and this is something that I've always believed, but there's a tension in Web3. So does the value always accrue to the interface layer, the app layer, or does it accrue to the infrastructure layer? There's always this tension between the two. So previous to Rippling's batch, there was Stripe, right? We both, you could imagine, obviously disagreed on it. And, Stripe founders are like equity owners in Rippling, and so we're like, we kind of, but obviously value accrued in both places. We've always bet that value accrues on, the app layer, the interface, that's where the brand exists. And like Web3, is like one place where there's a lot of value that is accrued on the infrastructure layer, right? So, and I fundamentally believe it kind of accrues only in the extremes. There is nothing in between, On the app layer, the difficulty is like being able to do everything in one place, right? That's how you can sort of like build a super app and accrue all this value. And, as Gaurav was explaining, it's become easier than ever when we built Rippling, we actually built, we had like hundreds of engineers like write adapters for every SaaS app out there so that we could make these things work. But now we have an open source repository, like code is out there, it's an open API, we don't need anyone's permission, and we can let AI go do it, right? So it's like an insane playing field where you could totally aggregate the front ends. And if you think about it, front end has also been a choke point for crypto. Like that's where the regulators come and like squeeze you. It's always the front ends that are prone to attack. Backends are like decentralized and like, censorship resistant. So if you can totally have like a front end, which is like a aggregator layer, you could do a lot. So with 0xPPL, we are just like pushing it, and reimagining what would wallets look like? What would navigating crypto look like in an age of AI? It still makes no sense that you're thinking about gas. Like, why are you thinking about gas? Like, there are hundreds of chains right now. With 0xPPL, you don't think about gas. You don't think about chains. We run a gas tank, so you never have to like think about gas on any chain ever. You don't have to think about, we anything that we show in 0x people is chain agnostic. So you can see, okay, this app is trending on this chain. You can go use it. You don't need to think about whether you have gas on the chain, whether you have money on the chain. We sort of manage the bridging, the swapping, the gas, all underneath. You know, you could do a lot of this stuff because like AI has unlocked the ability to interact with like open source code.
Makes sense. Shank, one thing I want to ask you, I was listening to SB Shekhar from Binance yesterday, and he was saying there are very few projects which are concentrating on AI and Web3. What are the challenges builders are facing in possibly building AI cross Web3 products?
Okay, that's a curveball. So let's try to answer it from first principles, right? I think even now, and this is a little bit of a surprise, that a lot of projects first want to launch, when you talk to exchanges specifically, right? A lot of projects want to launch a token first and then try to find a problem that they can solve around that, right? It's a narrative leads revenue sort of an approach, which conceptually doesn't work in my view. The world needs more people to solve a real problem, try to find ways to make money while solving that problem, and if that works out, then you potentially go and launch a token, right? But unfortunately, the incentive structures of our space are such that launching a token is a lot easier than building a business. And if you look at the traditional world, a company would build out for 5 to 15 years, potentially do an IPO, that would be considered a great milestone. Even today, you would go on to LinkedIn and celebrate ringing the bell or doing an IPO, right? Whereas, unfortunately, in our space, you could, the four of us could take a break in the next 3 minutes, 27 seconds, potentially launch a token, right? So the answer to your question, well, there are a lot of teams that are building meaningful solutions leveraging AI. There are a lot of teams using Web3 to build a real revenue generating business that solves a problem. Why are those two things not coming together? It's, in my view, linked to the structure of incentives in the space where it's much easier for somebody to launch a token, raise some money, launch a token, give a return to the early team members and investors and move on, rather than aim to build something good. Till that thing continues, I think that problem will stay in the space. It's not to do with AI cross Web3, it's for anything cross Web3 in that sort of regard.
I'll just add to it, right? I think there are two fundamental more reasons also. A lot of people see this AI hype, but to be honest, AI is still in very infancy phase. If you basically see, if you want to do a Web3 project in AI, you have to have skill set of tokens, backend development, AI, and data. The number of people in the world who have this skill set or an intersection of these is extremely few. That's the first fundamental problem. The second fundamental problem is the AI is in infancy phase. And honestly, it's already such a complicated problem to begin with. Like, a lot of people are just creating interfaces on top of the intelligence model which somebody else is building, right? If you basically build something of your own intelligence, it's very hard. It's time consuming, it's painful, right? And you need smart guys there. There are already so many hard variables there. And centralization is the most efficient way to solve it right now because it's fast, right? Once you solve the fundamental problems of AI, in a year or two, then you will see these other technological things which are a bottleneck today. Like, for example, blockchain is not that fast, right? Immutability creates a problem in itself. Each time you have to give transparency, you're adding one more variable in this complicated equation already. Like, why to make a problem hard enough, like, which is already hard to solve, right? So I think once in a couple of years, these hard problems are solved, fundamental things are there, and our technology catches up from blockchain side also, you'll see many more AI companies coming up in, I think, like 2 to 3 years.
We're almost out of time, so I'm going to ask a rapid fire question. Tell me one thing that you're excited about experimenting with on your own in AI, and one thing that has utterly disappointed you. Prasanna?
I'm excited about AI tool use. I think that's the thing that's being unlocked right now. I think hundreds of billions are like put on it. We like to think as entrepreneurs, we adopt state-of-the-art tools, but there is still a lot of things that I see in my company that AI could do that engineers are still doing. So AI tool use training, that's something that I'm really excited about.
What are you disappointed by?
I'm disappointed by how much AI can get stuck in a loop and do silly things. and sometimes it can solve the hardest problem in math. That dichotomy is like astounding.
Ishank?
Excited about the ability to build MVPs really fast to test new ideas. A little disappointed, but hopeful about things around AI agents and the work that they're doing in DeFi.
Two things, I agree with these guys. One thing which I'm very excited is that majority of the innovation is happening from the global south now. Like almost all the major models are coming from China and this part of the world. I'm really excited. And plus we have taken it to the next level that we're not just building it. We're basically creating an open architecture, which is creating a standard for US to make it open source, the architecture, right? It's creating a standard. That's something which is to be very proud of, being from global south. That's one thing which is exciting. The disappointment is people taking shortcuts in the builder community rather than basically creating something of real value. They're just trying to create a thin layer of somebody else's intelligent model to create a value. They don't realize that they're basically sitting and creating a stall in somebody else's kitchen and they're watching you and they're watching your business. The moment they see that there's something real, they'll kick you out, they put their own stall. They don't realize that they're young enough, they don't see this happening in past. That's something which is very disappointing, they're taking shortcuts.
The stall in the kitchen image is in my head right now. Thanks a lot, folks, for sticking to us and listening to us. Thank you all.